to another episode of Opinionated SEO Opinions. And this time we are joined by wonderful Roxana Stingu to discuss everything about hiring SEOs and what awaits our industry in the future. Welcome, Roxana.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. Would you like to give us a quick intro?
Yeah, sure. I'm Roxana Stingu. I currently head Search and SEO for Alamy. If you don't know what Alamy is, it's the most diverse stock photography library. We also have stock videos. And when I say I head Search and SEO, I mean that besides SEO, I also overlook the internal search engine, which has ranking factors and things. Quite fun.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely fun. Wonderful. And our hosts, Tori Gray and Sam Torres, are present as always. Hello, ladies.
Hello. Welcome back.
Yes.
Yeah.
So before we get started, a quick word from our sponsor. So this is actually sponsored by Ahrefs. And so anybody who's new to the industry or looking for tools to help them, they actually have a free tool that you can use for website auditing. Go to ahrefs.com/webmaster-tools. We'll include a link in the description so that you can check it out and start using their platform for making your efforts that much better. Highly recommend. We use Ahrefs at the Grey Dot Company. Love it as a tool. So definitely check it out.
So let's kick it off with the existing trends and experiences that you're seeing right now in hiring SEO team members.
Well, I think it's clear that since the pandemic has started, it kind of accelerated the shift of media and retail toward the internet, maybe except for certain websites. But along with this, there's an increased need to hire great SEO talent. And even though the demand went up, I don't think the supply has. So it's kind of, same number of people going into SEO, but more SEOs are needed. So I'm kind of seeing a lot of big companies poaching people from other companies, convincing them to come over, offering better packages than before, which is absolutely awesome for the SEO industry because kind of the salaries have gone up on average. But I think the problem is for people like me who need to hire experts and I'm having trouble finding people. It's not as easy as it was before, for sure.
Due to the competition. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm also seeing a lot more senior roles than ever before.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm also seeing a lot more people calling themselves seniors, but maybe not being there quite yet. Because I was hiring for a senior level and a lot of the applicants were not up to par.
Yep, definitely a challenge. Just on the whole, is that more in terms of hard skills or soft skills or both?
I'd say both because there are a certain set of soft skills I'm looking for in any candidate, no matter what level they are.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's a set of skills I'm looking for based on the level I'm hiring. And I would expect certain things to appear in a CV and then be able for the candidate to kind of back them up when asked about.
Mm-hmm.
And what I noticed was a few things added in there that seemed to be more than they were. Because when I asked about it, for example, you'd have React listed in there. And when I would ask details about working with React websites, it's like, oh, I crawled the React website once. It's like, that's not something you put in your CV, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it didn't happen a lot, but it does happen.
Sure. And I feel like that kind of practice is pretty common, unfortunately, in the tech space, because you've seen the same things with developers as well as the need for senior developers. So I wonder if it's a tech thing or if it's just when the industry is growing faster than it can supply, right? I feel like that's definitely going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also just on the flip side, like you said, Roxanne, it's a great time for SEOs because I feel like we're finally getting recognition for what it is that we bring to the table. But that doesn't always necessarily translate to the reality of what people can do. So it's always interesting to see.
Yeah. And there are so many angles to it, like with all the development in the AI and also data field, and like everything is coming into one place and we generate lots of different viewpoints. So it's very important to have all those skills combined.
Yeah. I mean, also on the flip side, I definitely see SEO roles that like want you to be a Python engineer and want you to do all of these other things, or, you know, maybe even they don't want you to do that, but the HR manager or whoever is hiring doesn't really understand SEO, and so just sticks a bunch of acronyms on the job posting, not really understanding what it is that you need to know. And again, that's another thing that happens in development. It's here, you should know all 15 languages back and forth, right? But really your job is only front end, and you know, you don't even touch any of those pieces. So I feel like maybe there's also a disconnect of people that feel like they need to game the system in terms of like the tools that you submit the resume to that might just punch you out if you don't just include the name like WordPress or React or SPA or whatever other of those things are, whether or not you actually need to use them. Weird. Anyhow, I also wanted to ask about how much are we hearing or seeing things relating to the Great Resignation? Like, are people moving more, do we think, in SEO? Are people, why do we think they're leaving? Where are they going to? Is it just for money? Are there high-level insights you have there?
Yeah, I heard this term quite recently, and I thought that is wonderful, just wonderful. I wouldn't be able to tell you, but from, you know, just talking to some of my my acquaintances and some people I talked to who have changed jobs recently, most of them didn't go because they weren't happy. They went because they could get better opportunities. And that's sometimes more responsibility. It could be more money. You mentioned before, you know, people put Python and everything in a resume, which is not necessarily a problem if you can back it up with a salary that goes with it. So you can't ask, you know, a mid-level SEO to have Python and God knows what skills when you want to pay them as a mid-level. So I think some people have kind of skilled up and they realize I can get paid more elsewhere for my new skills than if I stay in this company. Other people got poached, so they resigned because they received a better offer. And, you know, I had to put a job on the market because my previous colleague received a better offer and he just couldn't say no to it. And that's why I had an available position in my team. And I'm not even upset because he did skill up and he did get better. And this was an opportunity, you know, I would have told him he's stupid to not take. So I can understand the situation. It doesn't mean I'm happy about it, but I can definitely understand it. And I think, you know, if there are better opportunities, you should go for them.
For sure.
And one of the reasons that I joined the Grey Duck company was because I could get better projects, because in Turkey, the clients that we had were limited. So I was like, let's go join an international team who can like support me with different projects, and both on the tech side and also like on page, etc., like everything. So that's another angle that I think really puts a cherry on top.
Which we're very happy you did, by the way. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Yep. So another question is coming from dear Annette Paul, and she's asking, when looking for a junior SEO, what are the main qualities and qualifications you would pay attention to?
Oh, hi, Annette, first of all. I think I want to answer this, but it doesn't matter if it's a junior or a super senior or any level in between. There, as I said before, there are a few traits I look for in an SEO. One of them is logical thinking. So, you know, I think because of the nature of our jobs with search engines, we only get like the tip of the iceberg when it comes to information and how it works. So it takes a lot of critical thinking in order to do an educated guess on what the rest of the iceberg might be hiding. So if you're not a logical person, and not everybody is, you know, that would be a downside for me. And I do also try to test how logical people are during interviews. I'm asking a couple of what if questions where I make up SEO situations that don't normally happen, just to see how the candidates would logically figure out a new situation, but using existing information that, you know, they already have. And
That's
you know,
great.
to give you an example, for instance, I would ask, how would Google handle crawling of a website if upon fetching the robots.txt, Google gets 403, a forbidden status code? So, you know, it's something you don't really see happening, but most candidates have never seen that situation happen before. So they kind of have to figure it out, but they already know how Google handles robots.txt. They already know how Google handles crawling. Is just for them to kind of put together all that information and be able to find an answer, even though they've never seen the situation before.
I love
And
that.
I have a lot more,
yeah.
but I'm not sharing. I'm keeping them for
Oh,
interviews.
Totally. Yeah, but I think one mistake sometimes people make is asking very specific questions about a specific way to hire, or not hire, but answer a very specific use case, and then don't hire people because they don't already know the answer off the cuff, even if they could logic their way through it, which feels like such a miss. Like, not everyone immediately. Oh, good.
Yeah.
My bell rang. Not everyone immediately who's never been in e-com knows exactly how to handle facets and filters, right?
Yeah.
And so I've seen incredibly smart people get turned down for e-com roles because they didn't know off the top of their head how to answer that. And that is so ridiculous to me and frustrating. Like, what a missed opportunity that business missed out on some brilliant people because they expected them to just know.
You do have to keep questions around the role you're offering, right? Like, you shouldn't be asking about, you shouldn't be interviewing people with no e-commerce experience for an e-commerce website if that's what you want. Or you should be more open-minded if you do interview people who don't have that experience. But you can't expect somebody who clearly states in their resume that they haven't done it to be able to answer those kind of questions. So I'm with you on that one.
But I think it's also very short-sighted, to Tori's point, because our job now isn't what it was 6 months ago. It's definitely not what it was 5 years ago. God, do you remember all the times we had to make like separate pages for the different spellings of words? God, it was awful. Like,
Oh, yeah.
so, which actually at this point might be more than 5 years ago. I'm getting old. But I think it's really short-sighted, because what you need is somebody who can take the knowledge they have and apply it to an ever-evolving situation, because that's what SEO is. You know, our job is never going to be the same. That's one of the reasons I love it. And it's also one of the reasons it's exhausting. But, you know, it's just because it's not the same, and it's going to keep evolving as the consumer mindset evolves. Like, we saw everything that happened with COVID. Consumer mindset and behavior had a major shift, and it's not going back to what it used to be. And so, you know, I think just the way that we have to evolve with that, you know, our job really just depends on what are the questions that people are asking and what answers do they need to find, right? That's the crux of our job at the end of the day. And so if we're not shifting where the market's going, then you're never going to be able to keep up. So I think, you know, trying to find that specific answer without like seeing the reasoning, you know, and maybe, you know, the person gets it wrong of what's going to happen to that 403, but if you can hear what the reasoning, I think I even read,
I hired people who didn't get it right all the time, but that's because they took me through the reasoning, and I'm like, your reasoning is right. Maybe your base information is wrong, but that you can learn, but you are thinking about it in the right way.
Well, and it's
So,
also,
yeah,
you know,
I'm not expecting a right answer.
Exactly.
I'm just expecting a detailed answer.
I think there was even, I read a tweet from John Mueller this morning. I don't know when it was posted, to be honest, but just how SEO, sometimes you have to try things and see what works, and sometimes you'll never actually know if it did or not.
Yeah.
And I think that's just so true, because there's also, you know, what works for one industry may not work for another, and it may not even work for the same industry, but a different brand. So anyways, that's my diatribe about
Totally ambiguous.
how much we change. So
Yeah, definitely. And all
Agreed.
that conversation.
Go ahead,
You said something, Tori?
I was saying agree.
Yeah. Okay. So, and this brings me to another question. What are your favorite and recommended tools or resources for someone who's starting out, who would like to keep up with this changing and evolving environment?
Oh, wow.
Actually, I have more to say on the previous one. I didn't realize we were moving on.
Yeah, I can go back to the previous one as well. We covered logical, and also add to this list analytical. And I don't think that depends on what type of SEO you do. You just have to be an analytical person. And again, it's just because of the nature of our job. It's identifying patterns in traffic and seasonality and grouping keywords together and analyzing backlinks, whatever it might be. So, there's also a lot of data we need to analyze. We need to be able to understand what's a normal fluctuation and what's a change in trend as well. So it's a trait that SEOs should have.
Great.
I agree.
Some other things that I look for are curiosity. Like, I don't want to have to spoon feed you every single answer every time. That's going to be problematic. You need to be curious, to look up your own, to ask your own questions, to have the initiative to look them up, and then to come discuss them. I don't expect you to have the answer based on your internet research, because Lord knows that can go badly sometimes. But you should be able to do some of your own legwork and bring those discussions to us so we can have a better and deeper discussion. Ownership is really, really critical for me. Again, it comes down to, if you said you're going to do something, I need you to do that thing. And then if you can't do that thing, I need you to raise your hand pretty early on and tell me things are not going according to plan.
I think that's for anybody who works in a team ever.
Yeah, I think that's, do you have a job? Okay.
Yeah, but it's also something I unfortunately,
but it's so hard to find.
Yeah. I feel like people are too focused sometimes on hard skills to the detriment of some of these like really, really critical pieces of like, can I just trust that if things are going off the rails, you're going to raise your hand?
Mm-hmm.
Nope. Sometimes you just ghost. Sometimes it's you shoot an email an hour before it's due and say like, oh, sorry, it hasn't gone according to plan. Like, not good enough. Like, you knew it was not going according to plan. You need to plan for that. And to some extent, I think that's even more aggravated in a remote work environment, because we don't necessarily have the opportunity to check in with people, or the sort of visual reminder of, oh crap, I owe them that thing, I need to get on that. Like, you have to do that for yourself in this new remote world. But that's hypercritical. And the last thing would be communication skills. Like, if you can't articulate what you want to happen, if you're not asking questions, like, certainly a junior level, I wouldn't expect you to be as good as someone as a senior level, because at a senior level, I have high expectations around ability to communicate. But I think that's really critical. And actually, a last one I would throw in is empathy. We're in the services business, so if you're not kind and thoughtful and thinking about where your clients are coming from and where they are in their situation, if you're so focused on yourself and how smart you sound and how many acronyms you know, and getting frustrated because people aren't listening to you, like, there's a disconnect there, right? Like, put yourself in their shoes. What are they going through? What do they need to figure out? How do we help them? It's so critical.
And that is such a good point, and it applies to agencies going, some people, even though they have in-house SEOs, they might hire an agency to help out during busy periods, or just as extra hands. Yeah. And I, at least in my experience, I've had agencies come in and try to trash the in-house SEO team as their first thing on the agenda. And it's like, be empathetic to these people. They've done all the work. You're coming here to kind of take over, from a good point on. You don't have to do all that hard work that they've already done. Of course, not everything is perfect, but it's way better than it was, for sure. So yeah, definitely for agencies, and also in-house. You work with people, you work with stakeholders in different teams. So you kind of have to be empathetic to their needs as well, not just yours. You work with developers, and we all know there's always this, we either love developers or we hate them. Developers are the new Marmite. You either love it or hate it. There's no middle way. So, you have to be empathetic to their needs as well, and how they work and what they need to do, and don't send them 40 pages of an SEO audit because they don't have time for it. Yeah. So yeah, I guess empathy is a big one.
Yeah, I think it's huge. And like you say, it's across all angles, and internal, you know, you have to think about your team as an internal SEO is definitely your customer, right? And then I would also say for agencies, God, I feel like if you're getting hired to support an internal team, like your job is to make them heroes.
Yeah.
That really saddens me that agencies are in there just trying to trash the in-house.
They want to
just tell you a
replace.
story about this. I'm not going to name names, but a very big SEO agency who came in and said, oh, we found all these pages that have been 404 that have thousands of backlinks pointing to them, and your team has done nothing about it. And I just stood up and I said,
was not necessary.
I stood up and I said, have you even checked any of those links? They're all automated spam, and we 404 those pages on purpose to get rid of the links. And it's like, you know, that was the end of it. We didn't talk to that agency anymore.
I don't.
But I'm just saying, like, why would you do that? I mean, we're colleagues. Give me a heads up at least, or, you know, just say, we found this. Can you give me some background? Anything. Turn it on a positive note. I think the industry has improved a lot. People work together more. We don't work against each other as SEOs as much. It still happens, I guess, a bit, but it's definitely gotten better. I mean, look at all of us in one room talking about hiring people. And I 10 years ago, I would have never imagined this happening.
That's true. I would agree with that. And I will say, I feel like I'm seeing more and more collaboration across agencies, which used to be like a no-no, right? And I do think a part of it is just because, you know, Begum, you mentioned this earlier, SEO is so broad, right? There's tech SEO, there's content, there's testing, there's analytics, like there's so much that an SEO could possibly touch that it makes sense to bring in different parties to own the different pieces, whether it's building a team, having multiple vendors, you know, whatever it is. It's just making more and more sense to get that collaboration. And then also just kind of have that, like, I think as a professional, this is probably true for every industry, but definitely for SEO, like you just have to have your moment with yourself as an SEO of like, this is what I do. This is what I know. Nothing is set in stone. And so I'm going to try to help where I can. And I need to be open to everybody else because they're experts in their own rights as well. Ideally, right? Ideally. So I think that's something that definitely the industry is getting better at doing, as, you know, really just our profession kind of ages and becomes more tangible as far as the value that we bring. I feel like for, you know, when I first started in SEO, it was so like black box magic, we sacrifice goats to Google kinds of conversations.
Exactly
like,
that.
Right? That it did put you on the defensive because you were having to defend your position and the reason of why you mattered so often. And thankfully, I don't feel like we're there anymore. But it's not super surprising to me that the industry has aged the way it has, just because, like Tori said earlier, HRs have no idea what we do. They have no idea how to classify us. And so there's just kind of that education that needs to go across all different verticals and all different departments. And it just happens because it's a young profession. We're young, you know, like Tori and I, because 12 and 14 years experience, we're grandmas. That's crazy to think about for almost any other profession. So, yeah.
I just rolled my eyes, and I would like to add something, especially when it comes to collaboration and like improving one another. I remember Roxana giving this training session on regex for the Women in Tech SEO community, and I picked it up from there, and it was like, it has become one of the daily things that I do, like either in Google Search Console or Google Sheets. I use it everywhere, and it was basically my passion that enabled me to start freelancing. Like, I was like pitching to someone, and the person asked me like what I really like doing when it comes to Google Data Studio reports. And then I opened all the regex codes that I built, like including case vents and everything. And she was amazed with what I do. And so I was like, thank you, Roxana.
And it has been
something
inside. You have no
Yeah,
idea.
definitely. Thank you so much, because it brought me a lot of knowledge on a professional level, and literally I use it every day. And I don't know if I would have picked it up if it wasn't for your like training session. So thank you again for supporting the industry.
I think it was just good timing for both of us, maybe. But everybody
Yeah.
who knows me knows I love regex, and I know how useful it can be. So I'm so happy you learn to love it as well, and that it is useful to you. So yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, definitely, of course.
All right.
Lovely stuff.
Do we feel like we've covered the qualities? Okay. I would say, just to add, my number one is definitely curious. You have to have a hunger. I can fix everything else. Train everything else, but I can't fix that. All right. So I think we're ready for what you had
Number
next.
2.
So the next question would be intermediate to senior level SEOs and the qualifications you look in those levels.
Interesting one. I think it's because I only hire technical SEOs and have been for the past 5 to 7 years. I'm always looking for technical qualifications, of course. And I think I'm looking for similar qualifications, no matter of level, but then I'm looking at different levels of expertise in those qualifications. So for instance, I'm looking for any person that applies for a technical SEO job to be able to use a crawler. But the question is, how are they using it? I would expect a junior to just kind of take the feedback from the crawler and pass it on. But then I would expect a senior not to do that because they know better. So they would use the crawler just as a tool for them to quickly do some checks, but then they would analyze what the crawler came back with, and they would actually provide the result of their own analysis that's put in context of that website.
Mhm.
So, but both should be able to use a crawler, just in different ways, I guess. And it applies, it's the same for data. So for instance, I would want a junior to have basic skills in Excel or Google Sheets or whatever, but then I'd expect a senior to have a very good command of Excel, or even be interested in SQL or BigQuery or anything like that. Of course, based on their previous past experience, if they worked with a lot of data or not, because you don't always need that. So I think, it's, and even just knowledge of the industry, I would expect both of them to be able to tell me how Google crawls, but a junior would just kind of give me a big highlight of how it works. And then a senior could actually go into a lot of detail, talk to me about the rendering process and everything. So that's also how I kind of train my team. I don't care what level they are. They all should be able to learn all the same stuff and be able to kind of grow in the same stuff. But then I have different expectations of them based on their level.
Sure.
Agreed.
Makes sense.
I think I have probably higher expectations also in terms of context setting. The more senior you get, like, not only should you be able to communicate, but you should also be able to like more quickly pattern match and understand or frame a conversation for someone about what we want to do and why. So it's like that next level communication. So this is what we're doing and why, and how that pertains to your specific situation, like what's wrong, or the strategy. You need to start being able to connect those dots a little bit more, I think, at that level.
Yeah, I would also expect a senior to be asking the right questions as far as how does, like, to set that context and understanding what's really going on behind the scenes as far as like business objectives, business goals, what's actually going to drive any kind of change. Like I will say I don't expect a junior to be able to do much in the way of prioritization, but I definitely expect that of a senior, right? Because yeah, I think it's just being able to really connect it to the bottom line for the business. That's a learned skill. I'm not sure that's very often something somebody comes out the gate with. Like, you just have to get
No, that's learned.
how that works. So
agreed. Yeah, I mean, I extend that. Like, you should be able to also push back and ask questions. So definitely a thing that happens all the time is someone comes to you with this is how it is, and I need you to do this. So you need to be able to kindly and empathetically say, why are you trying to do that? Tell me more about your situation, what you're trying to accomplish. Because if you don't know SEO, you might not be telling me to do the right things, right? And so you need to be able to, so I mean, internationalization for SEO is the classic example of, hey, we're going international, we're launching all these websites, I need you to do the implementation of an hreflang, right? And then so I have to pull up and say, is that the right thing to do? Should you be launching that? What are your goals? What are your timeline? Like that might shoot you in the foot. So let's talk through the reasons why and what you're trying to accomplish first, without pissing anybody off, hopefully.
Ideally, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I would say on the flip side, just because this is my soapbox, we as SEOs have to recognize that the same is true for developers. If we tell developers something to do, we need to be open to them asking us why. What do we ultimately want? Because they might come up with something far better because they know their ecosystem. Anyways, I'll get off that soapbox for now.
No, I've seen that too in roles. Like I've been a product manager working with marketing teams and engineering teams and seeing and marketing ask for a very specific thing that they thought would accomplish what they wanted. And then they got built and then it didn't do what they wanted. It's problematic. But yeah, we all need to listen to each other and understand the goals and build stuff, period.
So funny how it always comes back to communication and just relationships, whether it's like
I was going to say the very same thing.
Well, it comes back to communication and developers apparently, but just
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, developers aren't perfect either. Like I've definitely heard them take in requests with goals and then build something else entirely. Like we are all human and we all make mistakes and we all need to get better at communication.
And that should be something a senior should be able to do better than a junior, be able
Yeah.
to admit mistakes, learn from them and grow.
Yep.
absolutely.
Good one. That's good.
What about the resource for this one? For example, when I first started out, I was reading all the articles that I could find about technical SEO and everything, but unless I went ahead and crawled the website, I was unable to put the things that I learned into practice. And when it comes to senior levels, it's even harder to like find those prospects and have the time to, or maybe even motivation to go on and do this thing as an extra on top of all your projects at hand at the agency or in the in-house team. So what would be the best resources that you would recommend for these people to experience bigger projects and kind of become to that senior level?
I think the best resource is going to our manager and saying, hey, I want to level up. How can you help me? And that's because I do that for my team as well. And we sit down, we discuss where do they want to get to where they are now and how we can get them in between. In terms of resources on doing it on your own, it's kind of hard because when you're on your own, and it's the same with learning SEO, a lot of us have learned on our own. And then when we started learning from other people or with other people, we realized, wait, there's a whole bigger world that I didn't know about. So it's the same when you're trying to level up. I think the easiest way is to find somebody who can kind of tell you where you're at and kind of give you that that view on if you want to get there, you have to go through all of these things that you might have not thought of. And that kind of brings me back to mentorships and mentoring, because you need to find a person who's willing to invest that time in you. And that's why I said go to your manager, because they're paid to invest that time in you, so they're more willing to do it. Internet is full of stuff. The more senior you get, the less you read SEO websites and the more you read developer blogs. I'm just saying you find more information there that you might be interested in. And I do find developer blogs have better experiments, because developers usually have access to the stuff I would like to experiment with, but don't have access to. So I highly recommend, even Google developers. Mozilla has their developers subdomain with a lot of information. And then you have all these random people that kind of combine development with SEO as well. So it makes it easier to transition into that. But the best way of learning is to do it. So you have to just open, dev tools and have a poke, see what your website does and see where it doesn't do it right or doesn't do it well. Talk to all your developers that you get in touch with and just ask questions and just say, hey, this is new to me. Can you talk to me about this? Like, we're SEOs, we don't know everything, although we act like we do. But I don't know, at least I do.
Don't give away our secrets.
But just ask questions. Anytime you hear something new, just ask about it. Don't let new information just pass you, because you're never going to learn new stuff if you do.
Yeah. I also like say, don't be afraid to focus. I know from my own personal growth journey, like when working with great people who are willing to give me feedback on the things that I needed to grow in, it can be really overwhelming because that list can be long, you know, what is actually required to get up to the next level. So the willingness to just, you know, not take it personally and to step back and say, okay, well, this is the thing I'm going to focus on first and go hard at that one thing, and then pull up when you feel like you've made progress and then go with the next thing, and then keep going in kind of a cyclical manner and not beat yourself up because you're not great at everything immediately, because that's just not reality or life. And sometimes that's picking the thing that's the easiest to grow in and then following that thread of, this is easy. Okay, this is interesting. This helps me understand this a little bit more better. So now I can dig into this thing over here. So to some extent, that path of least resistance can really help you just get things done instead of procrastinate and never do anything.
Get ready for this talk in February. And I was going to jump right into cultivating and growing SEO talents once you're working with them, because I think they quite overlap. How do you feel about that?
Well, when it comes to my team, I've always seen continuous learning as the only way to produce good SEOs, because everything changes all the time. So if we don't keep up, we're kind of behind and not doing our job as well as we could. So training for me is very important, and it can take different forms, and especially with SEO, it can be so many different things. So to give you an example, if there's, let's say, a new area of SEO that doesn't quite, is not a priority for the work we're doing at that moment, I still don't want this to kind of go past my team without us acknowledging it. So I'd usually just have one of the team members go out there, learn about it, do a synthesis of it, a summary, and then come back and tell the rest of the members what they learned, and only kind of keep it to the main things. And take out all the noise. So this way, only one person is kind of sacrificing their time, but everybody can learn about it, even though it's not the main thing we're working on. So we stay up to date that way. If it's something more complex, so for instance, my team said they want to learn Python, but you know, it was their choice. I swear, I didn't force anybody. You know, it's something more complex, so we would try to kind of approach it. For instance, we found projects that other people did, and like their collabs in Jupyter notebooks that they shared, and we decided, okay, here's a list of things that if we learn how to do, would make our life easier, our day to day. So they spend time on those, trying to understand them, modifying them, making them work for what we need them to do, and trying to understand how they work. And then about once a month, we meet up and we discuss these projects, see if they got stuck anywhere, or if, you know, is it ready to save it as a solution we can share with other people in the business that might need to do the same thing. Because that's the beauty of collabs. You just run them and they work, right? Once you set them up. But there's also the day-to-day learning. And I do stand-ups with my team, and we kind of all share what we're working on. And I do encourage everybody to say if they discovered something new or if they learned something new. So it could be something, you know, stupid, like some feature in Excel they didn't know exists, and they share it with the team, and all of a sudden we're all using it. Or it could be, you know, I read this article last night and I found it fascinating. You guys should read it too. It can be anything, but it's continuous. It's every single day.
Yeah.
Some things I'd say we're working on in that capacity. We're small, we're not there yet, but you know, I'd be interested in really growing like a dedicated sort of apprenticeship program, like, because what I've often seen is either it's one end of the spectrum or the other. It's either incredible micromanagement and incredibly detailed, like this is what you need to do constantly on top of people and not giving them the freedom in the room to do things. Or like you throw them in the pool and hope and like don't care if they drown, right? Like figure it out or don't and get out, right? So in terms of an apprenticeship program, it's a more concerted effort around a more mentorship focus of management around, okay, here's your ongoing feedback. I want you to try this new thing, this new audit, this new presentation, this thing you are uncomfortable with right now. I want you to do it for yourself and put it together and maybe present it to me first, and then I can give you feedback. And then when you feel like you're in a better place, like maybe at that point, we give you actual at-bats in front of clients. So once you then have gone through those feedback rounds, you've gotten the feedback on your presentation, now you can talk to clients, but you still have someone there that can step in and support and answer questions. Or, you know, if things start going off the rails, you still have guide rails, you still have the support along the way. Like maybe that's a way to actually help grow people instead of, shoving them in the pool all the dang time.
This sounds like good management.
Yeah, but it doesn't happen anywhere. I mean, not anywhere, but in a lot of places too often, especially if you're in a startup environment, you know, it's sink or swim very much. It was my experience. What about you guys?
For me, it depends again on the level. So if it's a junior, I'll be definitely micromanaging a lot, but that's because I'll put it on me and not on them. I don't have the trust yet that they can produce pristine work that can get out of the team without me looking over it. But when it comes to a senior, I'd expect them to go do all their work without me and only come to me when they have questions or they want to talk about something or they want to debate it or they want a second opinion and just kind of throwing ideas. But I wouldn't expect them to come, you know, I wouldn't check if I ask them to do a report. I wouldn't go over it again. Just being like, did you do it right? You're a senior. I mean, you got here because you can do it right? So I think it's important to trust your people based on their skill. And it's important to know their skill as well.
Agreed. Yeah, I would say in agency life, because that's been most of my career, it was very sink or swim as well. Mostly because you'd have salespeople who would say yes to things and you're like, we don't do that. And it's like, well, you have to figure it out now. It's like, oh, okay, let me jump on that. But I will say I've been fortunate to be on teams where we actually put together like, I think it was 120 hours of training videos for just teaching SEO. So my poor team had to get to work, like I think we started at 8:30 every morning, and I would be on camera teaching for anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour and a half on whatever the subject was for that day. So, you know, thankfully we got to build that program, but I will say once we made it, there wasn't a whole lot of effort to keep it up to date. So I think that's something that we're definitely challenged with for any kind of education programs that you want to build, whether it's, you know, in-house, in agency, you know, just some kind of internal education platform. It's a huge responsibility to keep it up to date. So I think, you know, it does make more sense to, you know, just be pulling in people on certain projects where they've said, hey, I want to learn these things. And so you just kind of, it's, you know, just do it together and get through it. Because then that also means that eventually you get to delegate and offload things, ideally. So I think that's really the hardest part is just how do you find a program or a solution that at its core is going to be consistently updating. And that's kind of a hard thing to do.
That's usually paid courses, but are they advanced enough? Because I think that's the problem. There are so many great courses out there, but if you're really advanced and you want to take it a level up, you can't really find anything. You still have to go on your own and just kind of, you know, do your own research.
Yeah, I also feel like for SEO, especially with tech SEO advancement, it's not SEO courses that we end up taking. Is completely different disciplines that we're trying to integrate into SEO. And I'd say even on the content side, you're probably taking courses that are aimed at UX, right? So
strategy, yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
so
you already combine, you have people like Lazarina Stoy, for example, and, she's combining machine learning with SEO, and it's already next level. And um, we talk about accessibility way more than we did before. Even as technical SEOs, we mention it all the time. And even with speed wasn't something that SEO would do. It was more development. But now SEOs come up with all these extra things you can do for speed to make it faster. So yeah, we're definitely taking on more disciplines than just SEO.
yeah, I actually had a sales lead who asked us if we would be handling network and infrastructure, like if we're admins for that. And I was like, no, we're not networking specialists. I'm not I don't do security. I know like this much in a pool that's probably 5 miles long. Like it's.
We know enough to know that you should go talk to an expert.
Yeah.
But you do keep an eye on it, right? Because this is why Search Console updated, showing us crawl stats and errors and everything, because you do keep an eye on it. And if you see a spike or anything that shouldn't be there, you're the first person to signal it. I mean, sometimes even before the networking people even notice it.
Yeah. But it is funny to me if like people are like, can you be our admin for AWS? No, that's like a whole nother job. But
You want to be a DevOps engineer?
Touch everything. No, that sounds.
Do that in your spare time.
To people who are in DevOps, real MVPs, you guys are so necessary. But God, I would hate that job so much. Yeah, it's so interesting the number of things that we touch, and then that's why I say like also for someone who's senior, when you're looking to level up, it's usually not aimed at SEOs. Because we're just trying to really like just take in a whole nother discipline and bring it under our wheelhouse, which is a little bit
T-shaped marketer, right? It's the beauty of that.
True.
Anywho, it's 11 and we need to wrap it up. Begum, you want to do your thing?
I'll cut that part out.
Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, thank you for all the little. Okay.
I'm gonna keep that.
That's the part that we should be having, definitely. Yes, well, thank you, ladies, for all the opinions. Do you have anything else that you want to add?
Just, can I add anybody working in SEO, please, just after some of the things I've seen, no matter what level you are, what SEO you do, learn how to gather data, learn how to handle and analyze data, and most of all, learn how to present data to different people who are not SEOs. Because I think once you're able to do that, everything else you're learning on top of it.
Beautiful takeaway.
Wonderful insight. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time, Roxana. It was a very insightful conversation.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Thank you.
It's been having you.
And to our followers, we are still expecting your questions at thegray.company/askSEO questions. So looking forward to seeing you in the next episode.